So now that Ajahn Kandiko is reading the calendar and handling guest monk duties and checking the Vihara email, I find in my mind there's a lot of space. So the last 3 months I've been the guest monk, and I've done this many times over the years, handling that position. And I think it's been over more than 2 years since I was a guest monk last time, maybe even 3. And I remember in that gap, the last gap I had, there was a lot of relief just from not being involved in a responsibility like that, even though I do have some satisfaction helping. There's that sense of relief. And so similarly right now, there's a lot of gratitude I feel for Ajahn Kandiko taking that on. And I noticed there's more space now. There's more space to take care of other responsibilities I've had. And there isn't as much spilling over of needing to, because of those other responsibilities, deal with the guest monk responsibilities in the afternoon or early morning. And so the 2 questions that I've kind of been reflecting on is, okay, so what now? Am I going to fill in the gaps with more things that I find to do? Am I going to search out for more responsibilities to keep myself busy? We were recently talking about a statement, which I don't think I'm going to get right, but the work expands with the time that is allowed for it. Meaning that if we engage with and take on responsibilities, and we increase the time that we're going to keep going with them, then all of a sudden we'll just find we're very busy, because that's where we've moved our lives. We've moved it into that space just because we've allowed time that we have in our daily life to increase with just doing more and more things. So in certain ways, this opportunity that Ajahn Kandiko has allowed is an opportunity for me to put on the brakes with a tendency to take on more and more, to do more and more. At the same time, it's interesting to reflect on what I imagine for an arahant is an experience of responsibility. And that is that there's likely just no difference whether one is engaging with doing something that is requiring the mind to work in certain ways and can be distracting for a person who is not an arahant, or one is not doing that and just sitting in meditation. I would imagine that it's very much the same result. There's no suffering. There's no feeling of burden, or the opposite of taking on things and doing compulsively. So it's important to continually relate to how we work with having responsibility, how we work with what we're doing, and how we can see whether there's kind of this weight that we carry around on our shoulders, the things that we're doing, or in addition to a kind of sense of needing to have to do this and have to do that, and I'm going to do this. And anytime someone might ask, can someone do this, then we immediately jump in and I'll take that on, I'll take this on. And so both those feelings of burden, either the burden of having to do and must do, and I'm going to take this and do this and that, and or feeling just the weight on the shoulders of all these have-tos, even whether or not they're actually occurring for us, or we have time in our lives, we can reflect on that sense of a being who has the capacity to not suffer around any of it. And at the same time, knowing that we might still be suffering around these tendencies, either feeling burdened or taking on too much, we know that we can actually do something about that. Because if we're not an arahant, then there's some practical things we need to do. So, as I was saying, work doesn't have to expand with the time allowed. We don't have to take on all the responsibilities of the monastery or just say yes to everything. We can say, okay, that's enough, and get the right balance so that we are feeling we're making a contribution, but we're also finding that we have time to develop in other ways. And each of us needs to learn that balance for ourselves. We need to know when there's times we're hiding from responsibility or not wanting to have any of it, and shirking duties or running away from something, and other times that we might be just too compulsive and taking on too much. Of course, the people who shirk duties and don't want to do anything really love those people who take on lots of responsibilities. But we want to try to see that in ourselves and say, okay, maybe somebody else can do this rather than me always saying yes to something. Or when we see that we might be actually having a pattern of avoiding helping out, that we might step up and say, I can do that. And in that way, we're just kind of seeking a balance and trying to understand where is it that our suffering is coming from when it comes to all the things that we can either help out with or not help out with or do. And so in that way, we're just kind of constantly measuring and having a sort of a larger picture of ourselves, like what's appropriate for us now, what's most helpful for us, and then what's also most helpful for the community. And even that sense of like taking on lots of duties, that might not be very helpful for the community. I know in my case, when I do that, then I feel stress, and then the way that I relate to the community members is unskillful. It can be very unskillful. So it's knowing, like, really in that larger picture, it's not just seeing ourselves as someone who's just helping out all the time. We have to see, like, what does that broader scheme of help really mean for supporting the community? So these are just some reflections this morning. You can maybe ponder for yourselves, think about general patterns you have. Obviously, some of you don't live in the monastery full time, so just in your lives, just how to question, what we're filling ourselves up with and how we can best help ourselves and others. Cool.